Okay, testing. Let's do this.
You ain't so tough with that bad boy tuck. I'ma get it how I'm living, I'ma walk the walk. Outline my lines, I rap through thought.
Hello, mate. How's it going? Welcome back to Football Therapy with me, your host, Jan. As always, I do hope you're doing well, mate. I really do hope that. Welcome back to Chelsea news. Todd Boehly's done some talking, and I tell you why, because it's bloody financial stuff again. God forbid one of these men come out and say, address the fans for a sporting lens, but I mean, yeah, when do you ever get that in football these days? It's not like, I suppose it's not like we heard from Abramovich, but I digress. He has spoken. It's at the Financial Times Business of Football Summit, so it is relevant. He does reference stuff in regarding Chelsea, and it's nice to just hear someone talk. So, naturally, I wanted to react to the quotes. I'm going to read off givemesport.com. Ben Jacobs shared this. It's an aggregation of hopefully all his quotes, but I want to go through it together with you guys, react and see what we think about the Chelsea co-owner. Of course, he's been massively in the spotlight recently. Of course, the couple hundred people outside Stamford Bridge protesting. There was his face everywhere, chants against him. To be honest, I feel like Jose Feliciano and the sporting directors have done very well, because Todd Boehly will always remain the face of Chelsea, even when he's not running Chelsea. We've spoken about it before. It was his consortium that came together to purchase Chelsea, and he was the face because he's the one that's run successful sports teams before, should I say. And the face of the good times, which we're really yet to see. The good times were Chelsea being bought and no longer unsanctioned. And of course, right now, the face of the bad times. So we're going to get into it together, see what he's saying. Please do consider supporting my content by just dropping a like if you want to, if you like the content. And if you do find yourself coming back here, why not subscribe? Join the GOAT gang. All right, let's get into it. So let's hop right in. I'm not going to share screen because it's kind of pointless. Chelsea owner Todd Boehly has spoken at the Financial Times Business of Football Summit this evening, Thursday, the 27th of Feb. The American has come under fire from fans in recent times for the direction of the club since his takeover in 2022, with concerns about the level of spending on young talent, as well as a lack of success on the pitch, and homegrown talent such as Conor Gallagher, Mason Mount, they're being sold. But Boehly has addressed those concerns and more while speaking in London. And here is every word he said. Oh, let's get into the good stuff. Todd Boehly on Chelsea fan criticism. Yeah, he says this: I think it's just par for the course. The sooner you learn you're not going to keep all people happy all the time, the freedom shows up. Glad you're feeling free, mate. I'd like to just say early doors, it's not about keeping everyone happy all the time. It's about keeping some people happy sometimes. We are just trying to execute a plan and recognize things aren't linear, and we are trending in the right direction. The trend is moving in the right direction, and that is the thing that really matters. In June, it will be 3 years in charge. That's not a lot of time. I kind of disagree with that, especially when you're looking at looking to get to 50, 60, 70 years old in life. It's a whirlwind of activity and steep learning curve, but I think that's also a good thing. First of all, I do like this season's not over. If Chelsea finish and we qualify for the Champions League and we win the Conference League, that is undeniably trending in the right direction. And then we would have learnt more about this squad that should be settling together, and hopefully, David Ornstein published that Chelsea will buy a good striker in the summer. I'm hoping for a goalkeeper, man, as well. And then, that would be a positive direction, certainly. So Todd Boehly on the Chelsea ownership dynamic. So this is very, very interesting, because this is essentially him reacting to the rift in the ownership, the civil war, the Boehly gang versus the Egbali Clearlake gang. He says this: the one thing I've learnt about the British press is they exaggerate a lot and leave stuff out. I mean, yes, I would tend to agree. I'm not going to comment. Ooh, To me, that kind of sounds like there's well, we know there's something. Of course there's something, because early doors in the Civil War, they were both briefing comments against each other, and obviously since that's calmed down a little bit, but it's definitely a thing, yeah. And he says, look, we've agreed on a strategy and a way forward, and stuff is getting done, and I don't look in the rearview mirror. Okay. Yeah, I had actually seen this next question a little bit. We know that the Premier League is viewed by Americans as really, really undervalued, because like in the top 10 sports clubs in the world, it's all NFL, it's all American sports clubs. And the Premier League is by far the biggest watched league, and football is the biggest watched sport in the world. So it's massively undervalued. That's why the Americans are flocking in. You get Middle Eastern states buying clubs, but that's more geopolitical, soft power play, sports washing essentially. And then the Americans, because they just see there's so much more money to be made. So this is interesting. He talks about the Premier League given shares. As an investor in sports, I have the ability to drive emotions and outcomes. You've certainly been doing that recently, mate. The top football brands are well equipped to grow in value. So the NFL is probably worth 200 billion. Netflix is 400 billion. So the question is, would you rather own the NFL or Netflix? And my bet would be on the NFL. They will continue to create great content. I mean, that's interesting. Because will Netflix be around forever? It's interesting. Now, if you look at football in Europe, hey, that's us. There is an evolution ongoing. The stadiums were built with a utilitarian mindset, and what you're going to see is a more professional sports coming to Europe, like the NBA. I do think that's massively growing in Europe. It's big in France and stuff. And the product will evolve and provide new revenue opportunities. And if you grow revenue, you grow value. Now, by the way, it's probably worth mentioning here, I know you guys, the smarter ones of you, will know I'm referencing a Financial Times summit here. So people who perhaps are criticizing him for talking about money, that is literally what he's there to do. He's not talking, about whatever, the sporting side of things per se, although he does reference some stuff. There is a bit of an unorganized landscape in European football, which reminds me of the retail sports network market in America. I'm unfamiliar. There's a handful of things that need to be sorted. One of the challenges, now this is interesting, guys, is relegation in football. So we're all terrified of sports people trying to Americanize football. Of course, they don't have relegation in America. They just have playoffs. Leagues and playoffs, so like, college football playoffs and stuff. Yes, so one of the challenges is relegation in football. It's hard to price, and it is a bad, relegation has like leveled clubs. There's no stability, and there's great jeopardy, right? So this is what he's addressing. If everyone was equal, you'd have a 15% chance of relegation. And I guess that kind of everyone is equal is kind of almost looking to American sports again in terms of stuff like the draft. The worst team gets the best player. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's just not like that in football. There's just powerhouses. But everyone isn't equal in football. So you have to work out how best to address the valuation challenge. Relegation is cultural, and it's not going anywhere. Oh, thank God for that. Don't touch our game. So why not every season, when a team is in the Premier League, you get a share of an EPL stock? And then if you go down, you keep that stock. So that would be like the longer you're in the Prem, you sort of have a value. Everton, like they wouldn't be in big financial trouble because they've always been in the Premier League. It's an interesting idea. So if you get relegated, you still have some financial reward for being a Premier League team for a long time. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it. I don't feel like it probably would. The smaller clubs, like the non-Chelseas, Arsenals, Cities, they'd love that idea because it would be making them safer and it would feel like it would be less of a big boys club. I'm not entirely sure how my moral compass thinks and how I think as a Chelsea fan, but obviously he's a Chelsea co-owner, so I don't think he'd be speaking against Chelsea's interests. So Todd Boehly on the misunderstood part of the Chelsea project. Right, this is going to be good, surely. Or probably not. The most misunderstood thing that we are thinking about and measuring success in years. So this is what's frustrating Chelsea fans. Of course, we've been used to seeing things quickly in the Abramovich era. You have to think big, but both short and long term. We are focused on the combination on both those things, and we're seeking the best way to execute. It's a balancing act. Strikers are hard to find. I don't know if he just followed up with that, because that's such a funny thing to just follow up with. I mean, it's true. You don't go to the grocery store and say, "Hi, I'm going to get a striker." I mean, that's true. It's an amazing skill set, and you have to have the right mentality. I mean, maybe this is also in reference to Chelsea just not getting a striker in January. By the way, I was listening to the Totally Football Show, which is an athletic football podcast, talk about Aston Villa. Of course, massively praised Aston Villa lately for doing exciting transfer business in January. They got 5 players in. The fans were happy at the time, of course. And, you know, Chelsea fans, we know more than ever with Rashford and Asensio linking up twice to beat us. But that was our only win in 7 games. And apparently, if I'm to believe this podcast, they have the biggest or worst ratio, the most damaging ratio of revenue to wage bill in the whole of Europe. So worse than Barcelona, that are mental. And they are desperate for Champions League football, and they are 10th currently, Aston Villa. So they could be in massive financial trouble if they don't qualify for the Champions League. I'm not necessarily defending Chelsea sporting directors. I think they should have got a striker in January. Maybe had the injuries come early, they would have done. But they are probably looking at stuff like that and thinking, although we have a higher revenue than Aston Villa, so it's kind of moot point, that the risk that Villa are taking financially and gambling to get in the top 4 actually looks quite dangerous now. They pay... anyway, I just found that interesting. Feel free to go check it out. Todd Boehly asked if Chelsea ownership will be the same by this time next year. Now, this is super interesting because he just says, I can't predict the future. Now, if you were all hunky-dory, yeah, in your ownership group and everything was lovely, sunshine, rainbows, you'd be like, yeah, we're in it together, we're in it for the long term, we're going to make this work, we're really excited, yada, yada, yada. But the fact that he's like, I can't predict the future, that's pretty much saying, yeah, stuff's not good, bro, between them. Surely, don't call me Shirley. Really, really, really interesting. Todd Boehly on sticking to the strategy. He says you can't turn left and right every 3 minutes. That might be some advice. That might be some of the advice we get if you really boil it down to it. Basically, changing your strategy every 2 minutes. You need to stick to your guns is what he's saying there. There's another quote that's not on this. I'm just going to quickly check. Yeah, I've got a quote here as well from Nizar Kinsella of the BBC from the summit that he spoke about long contracts. He gave an explanation on the contract policy. He says this, you have to accept it's a unique model, but it's the way this market operates. I don't see it as good or bad, but I see it as the way the market operates. You can always focus on how you keep doing something together for a very long time, and that's the option you are trying to cultivate, keeping players together, I suppose. How do you do that? You identify a younger portfolio of players to be consistent and reliable for a longer period or a long period of time. That's an option that's valuable. Sure, the quote goes on, I'm just interjecting here. And while many of us, me included to a degree, agrees with that and thinks that could be helpful to Chelsea, clearly there's a chasm of lacking seniority in the team and maturity, and there needs to be the model can be this, but maybe in this X amount of squad of young players and this structure, wage structure, contracts, there's an allowance for 2 senior starters. Yeah, just some sort of relatively abstract addition to the model that can make a big deal. When you think of the contracts here, a 7-year contract is really a 5-year contract, as 90% of the time you have to make a decision or shoot yourself in the foot with a player trying to run down his contract. So he says you either agree to terms or you shoot yourself in the foot, or agree there's greener pastures out there. Therefore, That's the reality of the model. You have to agree with that. Not only did you amortize, and that was a nice side benefit of what they were doing when they did the amortization loophole, but you also build a team excuse me, that stays together. When you read about teams down the years, they're led by superstar captains, and basically, yeah, I think he's kind of almost referencing the golden age of Chelsea here, how Chelsea were great, but there was that Chelsea team, that the spine, and that a lot of them stayed together for a long time. But what Chelsea were doing is obviously signing renewal contracts all the time, and they're viewing it as a way of ensuring these good players stay together for a long time, and sort of, I guess, I'm sort of guessing to a degree here, but hoping they become this sort of JT, Lampard, Drogba, Czech, do you know what I mean? And then these kind of players, they sort of find them, whether it's a Cole Palmer, a Caicedo, a Fernandes, a Wesley Fofana, maybe a Nico Jackson, maybe a new striker, and that they can just become this golden era of Chelsea players that stay for a long time, and they've done it in such a way where they've amortized their values and trying to be extra clever, basically. It's all great in theory and perception. But yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's really interesting in many ways to just hear him talk. I do prefer listening to Todd Boehly than Vedad Igbali. I just feel like I just get a bad feeling about Vedad Igbali and the things I've heard as well. I mean, if Chelsea come good, great, under these owners, great. But when we had an opportunity to be bought by several candidates, I did buy into Todd Boehly in comparison to the opposition that we were covering at the time. I wasn't looking at Clearlake and Vedad Igbali. Vedad Igbali's got no sporting history whatsoever. He does Bloomberg Summit talks, but he just talks money. He doesn't really have a position of experience in sports teams like Boehly has, long-term success and winning championships. And yes, it's a different country, different sports. Does it translate to European football? Maybe not much. But more than nothing, having no experience. What did we learn? Well, we learned they're sticking to the plan. They think it's going to be better than last season. They believe it will come good. Yada, yada, yada. But I think what we've learned, really, is still there's a fractious, well, this is me reading between the lines. The foundations of the ownership, to me, sound like they're weak. The only thing they can agree on is the model, and that's what they believe. And of course, that's one of the biggest criticisms from Chelsea fans is the model, or at least certain elements of it. But it sounds like he's confirming it's not all, it's not all rosy over there. Still, let me know what you think. Comment down below. Let's start up the conversation. I wanted to react to this because I thought it was relevant to our club, certainly. So, yeah, thank you for joining me as always. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Do keep it locked to Football Therapy. Here every ruddy day, of course, mate. And I hope to see you back here. Take care of yourself. Peace.